This video is brought to you by New, a technology company building energy solutions that enable a faster transition to an electric future. Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec Reviews video. This is our 10,000 mile ownership update of the Lucid Air. This is my dad's car. I've stolen it from him for some time to do some testing with it and things like that. So a huge thanks to Out of Spec Dave on YouTube. And well, I wanted to give you my impression on what 10,000 miles has been like in a Lucid from our experience, from service to driver assistance to reliability to software stuff to build quality. Let's go sort of front to back. This will be a very quick video, and then of course we have all the in-depth testing to come. We're going to run this in the hogback challenge. We're going to do the 10% challenge. I'll probably do another range test with it. We have so much to do, so let's get into what 10,000 miles looks like in a Lucid Air Grand Touring. Well, forgive me if we kind of scramble along through this video. I haven't really laid out my thoughts ahead of time, so I'm sure things will pop into my head as they go. But I first want to start with a little bit of a backstory on this car. And this is my dad's daily driver, if you will. But now I've stolen it and driven it more than he has. So thanks, Dad. So here's the story. My dad wanted a Lucid for the longest time. He's been a huge fan of the company and loves the technology that they've touted. So I said, okay, well, you got to get one. So he reserved one. And then he was like, oh, I'm reserved the Pure. Then we started looking at the used market, and the values are just amazing in the used market. Not if you bought one new, but if you bought one used, they're pretty damn good. So this car, if you were to spec it out today, is $155,000. Not cheap. They also have the Grand Touring Performance, which is another 30 grand roughly on top of this. And that actually gives you more changes than I think Lucid tells anyone. So we need to do a whole video on what the Grand Touring Performance gets you, because it's pretty impressive. So my dad bought this one used with 890 miles on the odometer. He found it online, picked it up from a gentleman. We have videos on this, and the gentleman was in Delaware, and he paid $105,000 for this car, essentially saving 50 grand over a brand new one without an existing reservation. Because again, early reservation holders could buy this car for 135 or 140. So he was really smart buying a used one right off the bat. The values have just tanked on these things. There's no way around it. And then what have we done with it? Well, initially we drove it from Delaware up to Connecticut. And then, he daily drove it for a bit. And then the road trips started happening. This is a car with 516 miles of EPA rated range now that it has the 19-inch Aero wheels on it. When my dad bought the car, it had the 21-inch wheels, which look so much better. Honestly, the car does not look good on these wheels, in my impression. Some people like it, some people don't. And they've updated the Aero wheels. We actually purchased these for the Cannonball, which I'll talk about as well in a little bit. So we had the 21-inch wheels on there. My dad drove it on there, and he's like, you know what? This is about long distance. This is the road tripping machine. It's got all the range. We've seen a peak charging rate on our friend Peter's car that we tested months ago of 351 kilowatts. This thing is all about covering distance. And so my dad and I both decided, hey, let's go in on a set of 19-inch wheels. We'll use them for the Cannonball. He can keep them afterwards. And that's basically what we did. And as a road tripping device, I kind of want to talk about that, because to me, that's really the main purpose of this trim level. If you're looking for a Lucid as a daily driver, as something that you just want to experience, I'm not sure it makes sense to go for this massive battery, 112 kilowatt hours usable in the Grand Touring trim. That's a lot of energy. It's a lot of range. And really, if you're going to be going on road trips, you need the range plus the charging. We'll talk about the charging, because that's actually my main issue with this car. It's not a Lucid problem. It's actually the public infrastructure problem, which we'll talk about. So let me show you how the car's held up. It literally hasn't been washed in 7,000 miles. So my dad took it all on his channel. You'll see it from, after we picked it up, he took it to Florida, back up to New Jersey, where we swapped cars. We then drove it, cannonballed it, New York to Los Angeles. And then I drove it back out here to Colorado. So I went from LA to San Francisco area back to here. And in that time, just in Wyoming, I believe, maybe in Utah, ticked over 10,000 miles. So take a look at the car. It's covered in bugs right now. And we're actually at where we filmed for our out of spec detailing channel here at Clear Detailing in Windsor, Colorado, where Colton's going to go through and detail this thing and make it look pristine. I didn't want to run it through a car wash because I didn't want to scratch the paint, but the paint's actually already pretty swirled under there, so it needs a full paint correction. I don't know if we're going to go through all of that, but Colton's going to at least make it look really nice and back to how it should look. No Lucid should ever be this dirty, but it looks good. It looks used, and it's used as intended. So yeah, where should we start? Well, I think just to sort of qualify my thoughts on the car so far is they fall into one of two camps. And there are, first of all, a lot of little niggles that drive me crazy about the car. Little things that you would never really see from an existing automaker like Mercedes or BMW or Lexus, something that they've had years to refine everything. Of course, this is Lucid's first product. This is a relatively early car, and I can imagine this iterative design change process will come in future models. And that's part of what you get from being an early adopter to a new product. There are little weird things. Things, as an example, if I hold the key, the reason the key is over here, and I stand just on the edge of the proximity range, which is like seemingly way too large of a range, the car locks, unlocks, locks, unlocks, and it just goes nonstop. The lights turn on and off. There it goes. I haven't touched anything. Locks, and then you stand over here and it might pop back open. It's so frustrating. So we leave the key on the car whenever we film with it. And there's actually another Lucid owner here who was having his car detailed from Colton. He was out talking to Colton, and Colton's like, the car just was locking and unlocking nonstop. So little things like that. When the headlights turn on, there's a really high-pitched resonance that comes into the cabin that's faint enough where you notice it, and it just gets annoying if you focus on it. So little things. And I think that might be something that goes away with age, because I think older people have worse hearing for high frequencies, right, Alyssa?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's something I noticed, but I've had passengers who don't notice it. But then I've had, like younger people in the car that are like, what's all this noise when the headlights are on? So weird little things. Then the other side of it is like, wow, this car is truly a benchmark in its category of doing certain things. And like stuff that this car can do that no other car can do. And so it's not yet a fully cohesive, fully baked package. There are certain elements of this car that are just mind-blowing, truly mind-blowing, really good stuff. So it honestly feels a little bit like Tesla in the early days, where Model S, you were buying a really cool technology package, but like, you don't know if the door's going to fall off or the windows aren't going to work or something. And this definitely has a sense more of quality than an early Model S. I'm not, sort of referencing that, but weird little bugs and things. So let's start with the good. The good is the driving of the Lucid. This car is built to be driven, and driven fast, and driven hard, and it's truly enjoyable. Even on the 19-inch Aero wheels, which don't have much traction, to be honest. They're on 245 section tires, front and rear. It's a Pirelli OE spec tire, all-season tire. And in the canyons, though, this thing is balanced. You're like right on the edge all the time, and you give it more throttle, the rear motor pushes as hard as it can, it then blends in the front motor. The chassis set up really well, and like it's actually fast. We went up in the canyons and ripped with the Polestar 1. We ripped with our friend Zach, who has a Model 3 Performance. We ripped with our other friend Bo, who has a fully built E46 M3, and this thing was right up with them. And especially on the straightaways, the performance to high speed is unbelievable. And to think that they have a higher performance variant than this, which is the Grand Touring Performance, is pretty crazy. And then to think that there's the Sapphire coming after that, that's going to be truly epic. I am so excited to drive the Sapphire. No question, the chassis guys, the powertrain guys knew exactly what they were doing here. And this car going down the road, that's where the time and effort has been spent. And it almost feels like they totally forgot about the software early on. That's gotten a lot better since my last review, though. So the driving of the Air, truly wonderful on a back road as an enjoyable thing. As a daily driver, it's fine. It's a bit big is the only problem. There's no rear steering, for example, around town. You get into an EQS, as an example, and the car, pivots around in tight parking spaces, and definitely, an i7 as well makes that big car feel small. This is a big car that feels big around town. But, I think the purpose of this car is not meant to be like your daily city commuter. You buy a Lucid Air Grand Touring with 500 and something miles of range to do the long distance stuff. And again, I did about, 6,000 miles in a very compressed period of time. and still want to get back in it and keep driving it and take it on road trips. And that's what it's built for. So let's talk driver assistance, because I think this is an area we're going to do a whole video on, our Hogback series, of course, but I just want to touch on it briefly. The driver assistance system is still pretty basic in its operation. The adaptive cruise portion is great, really good, very smooth tuning. Slightly accelerates when you hit the left turn signal to initiate an overtake, really good. The active steering portion, I have very mixed feelings about. You see, I think the camera is actually miscalibrated on this car, because I remember when my dad first picked it up, I drove it out to Tom Bologna's house to film a Charger review video. And the car was awesome. I was like raving about the system. I thought, wow, it's locked in the center of its lane. It's so competent, really good. Since we picked it up from my dad, actually, well, we didn't use it on the Cannonball the whole way across because we were driving a bit too fast. The system only lets you do 90 miles an hour. And so we barely, I think we used it for maybe a minute out of that whole drive. But I've noticed that the car just hugs the right lane. Hugs the right line, I should say. If I go, lock the system on, it's like miscalibrated and it just drives on the right line. Now, I know Tesla's autopilots have that used to be a problem. Now they have an automatic calibration process. I've sent Lucid Service a message to see how to get that calibrated before I shoot the Hogback video. I want them to go through the car and make sure it's totally operational before we film our driver assistance review. So that will be coming. The next portion of it is, let me just show you this in here. You'll notice I have this napkin here on the dash, and to be totally honest, that's the face recognition camera in this car. I have no basis for this, but I just don't feel like Lucid should have access to see my face as I'm driving. Not saying they ever would, but certainly Lucid, we've through some service requests my dad has done, has allowed Lucid to remotely log into the car to view certain things. And so I know Lucid at least has some access to view some stuff on the car. I'm not saying they would ever do this or have done this, but I just cover that up because I don't know if they want to count how many nose picks I have going down the road or anything like that. So we cover up that just in case. I don't know. It just seems a little bit creepy to me. I probably shouldn't have those feelings, but I do the same thing in my Rivian with the little top thing as well. Okay, so driver assistance, at least for now, is massively annoying because the camera seems to be miscalibrated. The lane departure logic also is really not good, and I think it might also be a problem because the camera's miscalculated. When I try and drive straight in the lane, it's constantly pushing and fighting me, and I have to turn all the systems off. So that's frustrating. And I think that is just a quick trip to service. But speaking of a quick trip to service, that's a big part of this 10,000 mile update is what's the service bin on this? Before my dad even picked up the car at 900 miles, it had 4 service visits. Now, I believe one of those was caused by a tree branch breaking the glass windshield, which was only like $2,200 or $2,400 for this entire piece of glass. It's expensive, but think about how much glass this is and the installation. It comes to here, and it's this whole canopy. I'm surprised it was only $2,200 or whatever it was. That's a pretty good deal, actually. And, I don't know, it had like air conditioning issues, little trim pieces the guy took care of. Basically, he went through, had the full shakedown on the car, and then it went to my dad. But during my dad's time, the air conditioning, well, let's think about what happened with the car. We had some panel misalignments that I believe they took care of. They had an air conditioning hose clamp or something popped off or fell off, and it lost all cooling capability, so it couldn't precondition the battery pack, couldn't cool the battery pack, couldn't cool or heat the cabin. And I have to say, through that experience, my dad found out, he called Lucid on like 5 p.m. on a Friday, and they overnighted parts to the service center that he was heading to. The next morning, they squeezed him in, he got a loaner, and he was on his way on his road trip so we could do the Cannonball in 2 days after that. So Lucid service, certainly it seems like this car has had to go in like an abnormally high amount of times. They also offer mobile service as well, something we haven't taken them up on yet, but I'm sure my dad will try it out. I don't like making him drive all the way up here to us. I like just to bring the car to the service centers, but my dad likes mobile service. And they've been truly fantastic. Anytime my dad has a question, he's calling their hotline. I'm sure he clogs up their whole day. I don't know why he calls them so often, but he does. And they're knowledgeable, and they help him through the whole car. And he's just been raving about it. I have no personal interaction with Lucid service on this particular car other than, just about to schedule this service appointment for the ADAS functions. But my dad's been more than blown away, so I have to give Lucid service props. They are killing it right now. Are they able to maintain that level of service as they ramp sales? We'll see. But right now, things are looking very promising. So the good about the car, we have great driving characteristics, great suspension characteristics for, cruising and doing all of these things. And that's the main point of the car, is the long distance stuff. So let's talk charging, because to me, there's no point to buy this car unless you're going on road trips. My personal opinion, you could go for a lower spec battery, either a Touring or a Pure, if you're not going to be doing the big distance stuff. And the big distance stuff should include charging. And Lucid's partner charging network, Electrify America, is what we primarily use to charge this vehicle. Comes with 3 years of free charging, something I wish they didn't do. It's just not needed, but sure, you don't see that many Lucids at charging stations. There's not that many out there right now, so it's not that big of a problem. But 3 years, unlimited time, you plug and charge and it goes. When you roll up to a station, plug and charge works pretty well. Let me show you the charge port. What you do is you just push on the bottom right down here. The port opens. It's a little bit slow, but it's not the end of the world. And you plug in the handle, communicates with the charger, initiates a charging session. That works pretty well. The problem is anything after that is left out of Lucid's customer experience. They have a great showroom vibe. They have a great service experience. They have great aftermarket or a back-end telematics support team. As soon as you go to a partner charging network, that experience is now in the hands of another company. And that company, at least in my experience with the Lucid, has really let this car down. There are very, very few charging stations out there that I've had a great charging experience with this one. And to be honest, most of them have been on EVgo or ChargePoint or other ones, not on Electrify America. And the reason is the hardware is just having massive software bugs with the car. Specifically, the Signet surge happens in the operating voltage range of this Lucid. Now, I understand there's a Lucid at EA headquarters. Someone commented on Twitter, and they're working on that. We don't hear from these companies, which I think is a real shame. It should be a transparent thing to let Lucid owners know what's going on. And I think Lucid should tell their owners what's going on, because so many Lucid owners have commented as well, saying, hey, I bought this car to go on trips. I go on trips with the charging network that you've partnered with because they're the only, honestly, cohesive CCS network in the country, and the experience has been less than favorable. That's really a shame. And it's something Tesla got so right early on, spending the money, building out their supercharger network. I really hope Lucid can come up with an alternative here. I know it's cash intensive, time intensive to build their own charging network. It seems easy just to partner with one of the existing ones. Unfortunately, none of the existing ones have a cohesive network-wide, country-wide network of chargers that can offer a seamless and premium experience. I've been saying the least premium thing you can do is road trip a CCS car in America. And unfortunately, that's where this car is let down, because it's out of Lucid's hands. And there's really nothing anyone can do that wouldn't take years and hundreds of millions of dollars at minimum to make this problem better. So that's a bit of a shame, because this car is built for road trips. It's got that big peak charging speed, and the last thing you want to do is take it on a road trip. In my experience, watch my dad's videos. He just had a horrible road trip up. We lost the Cannonball record because of the charging infrastructure being so poor. And I see no signs of it getting any better. Even if they fix this Signet surge, you're still sitting in the back of a Walmart charging this thing, which sucks. Let's talk about charging if you do get it right, because there are still plenty of chargers that can max out this car. There's ABB chargers right now on EA's network. There's EVgo Delta units. Those Signet units actually work pretty well. The EVgo ones with this car, no Signet surge on EA's units. EVgo's units. And well, there's a couple good things going on here with charging. First of all, the 80 amp AC charging has been wonderful. I visited Tom Malogny again, and we plugged into his Ford Pro charger. I got 17 to 18 kilowatts delivered to the car on AC. That's truly wonderful. I love that. I can't wait for Lucid to release the cable to allow for bi-directional AC charging. I really hope it happens while I still have this car out here in Colorado, because think about it for range tests. We can run a car all the way out, J1772, both cars together, link it and send the power. Oh, it'd be epic. And that's really a key functionality that needs to be unlocked as soon as possible to these cars, because it just adds the next layer of cool things that the Lucid can do that no one else can do. So I'm looking forward to that. The charging curve is weak sauce. There's no way of saying it. It's got that big peak. You got to plug in dead. You'll see 330, 340, 350 kilowatts if you get the whole thing right. But getting that whole charging experience right, it's actually a little bit difficult because there's a manual preconditioning button in the car. It doesn't automatically precondition when you select your charger in the navigation system, which is a whole nother topic of their navigation software, which we'll get to when we get inside. And that curve really needs to be beefed up. There's no other way of saying it. This is supposed to be the technology leader, the best car on the road for road tripping, the best tech out there. And guess what? Cars with way smaller batteries are holding way higher charging speeds deeper into the pack. Now, is Lucid balancing longevity? Are they just focusing on the range and not the charging performance? I don't know. We've seen some arguments from people that say, hey, well, how many Lucid owners are actually going to go on a road trip and use the charging network and charge? Well, my argument is, well, how many Porsche owners are ever going to max out their car on the Autobahn? That's what they're built for. That's why they bought the car, because it can do it. How many Range Rover owners are ever going to go to the top of the mountain over there? Probably none, but it's nice to know you could, and that's why you buy the car. A luxury experience is having excess capability, not being limited. And this car certainly leaves a lot of room to be desired in the charging curve area for excess capability. Certainly, you may not need the fastest charging all the time, but when you do, and you spend $155,000 on one of these things new, you should have better charging, especially when an Ioniq 5 rolls up and is still doing 240 kilowatts at 70%. Pretty crazy. So I really, really want to see the charging curve beefed up here. And of course, there's trade-offs with longevity and heat management and all of these things, but I would argue that should have been played into when the car was engineered early on, just my impression. For how I have a video coming on this car where we actually used it from LA to Phoenix, which is actually like the perfect distance for this car, because we were able to do it on one charge. It was 400 miles. That's about the highway range you get out of this thing. If you drive normally, 400 miles. 516s mixed driving, of course. I've seen 430, 440 at 70 miles an hour. People drive faster than 70 in the real world, of course. 400 miles at 75 miles an hour or so. That's a comfortable number. You go 100% to almost dead doing that. And that trip worked really well because I was able to charge in Phoenix, and then we could skip chargers both there and back. We did stop at a charger on the way back to film a video, but that's beside the point. Having that much range for that scenario, if you're doing a DC to Boston run, or again, that Phoenix LA or Phoenix or LA to San Francisco we did on one charge as well, that's where maybe the range comes into play and charging doesn't matter so much. But I would argue if you're going on a trip, you're going to hit some chargers. Charging should be improved. Charging should be a bigger focus. And I don't like the arguments that say, well, like, oh, no one's ever going to use it, so why do we need to adapt it to be better? Well, it's a lot of money, should be the best. So there's charging, there's range. Car has a lot of range, a lot of charging, a lot of great comfort. It's really great at that stuff. Again, the Cannonball was amazing in the car. We have videos showcasing how good this car was. Let's talk software before we go inside really quick. When I initially tested the Lucid Air, it was actually at the start of production event in Casa Grande. I was able to witness the first production cars coming off the line. I was able to test drive a Lucid Air. I only had about 15 minutes to drive one, and that car was pretty cool. It was really a great experience. We talked about all the calibration of the low speed, driving the chassis. That car actually, interestingly, had Dream Drive, but it took almost a year for Dream Drive to be deployed to their larger fleet with, users out there in their vehicles, which is a bit of a shame. So it seems to me that their software has been the weakest part of this car. And some of the best products that we know today are very software centric. Tesla and Rivian are two automotive brands that focus heavily on their software, and it provides a great ownership experience overall. I know because I own both, and that to me is really the key central part of a car should be the software experience. It seems to me that Lucid figured this out after start of production and is now like, holy smokes, scrambling and getting their stuff in order. Because, to be totally truthful, in our 6,000 or 7,000 miles, I've driven this car now about 7,000 miles, I haven't had one software glitch, not one. And when I tested Peter's car a while ago, it was a software glitch every minute. And I was just frustrated with the car because it was so, crashing, and then the sound system would blow at full send, and, car wouldn't unlock, it wouldn't boot up. I haven't had one software issue, truly. It's massive improvement. I may not like the user interface of everything, but it's at least working as designed. That's massively better than anything. So let's jump inside. I want to walk you through some of the screens, some of the settings, some things that really bug me that I've experienced. But maybe we'll walk around the car and I'll show you a bit more. The car's quiet, cruising down the highway, by the way. This one seems quieter than other Lucid Airs that I've been in, and the 19-inch wheels really seem to help with that compared to the 21s. Very, very quiet, serene, comfortable experience driving down the highway. Back seat we sat in, we rotated drivers on the Cannonball. Huge back seat, wonderful back seat. Again, the big battery means you don't have much floor space, but if you go for a smaller battery, you get this garage space, this sort of, I don't know, scalloped floor that can help. I haven't experienced, maybe I have sat in a Touring and it was better. Trunk space. We have it filled with stuff right now. Spare tire, jack, some other things. This is a very wide opening, a very large trunk, and really nice. I would have preferred a hatchback, but that actually probably would not have been as good for chassis rigidity and also NVH, because sometimes when you have a big panel in the back, you get this boominess effect in the car. So I think this is the right compromise, this sort of clamshell, very wide opening. You can see we're taking advantage of it, and that's really kind of nice there. The front trunk, by the way, these door handles, infuriating. They just open and close all the time, and they feel so unpremium getting in the car. I'm going to start getting into some nitpicks around some things like it's just plastic underneath here. They have no weight to them. They're so flimsy. And when you open it, you can see I put in an open request, and it takes a half a second for the door to pop. Like, watch, request, pop. So that's a bit unpremium. Let's pop the front trunk. A little crunchy up there. It feels like it was almost stuck. This is wonderful. I have been really utilizing this front trunk quite heavily. And you can see we had some ancillary components. Thanks to our friend Sky for this windshield cleaner, one of our spotters along the drive. We had a tow strap in case we ran out. We were going to tow charge this thing, which could make an interesting video. We still might. And this is the best part. Every Lucid owner should have this, I think. Not sponsored, but really cool. This is a modern spare tire under here. You can go to modernspare.com and buy one. And it fits perfectly in the under front trunk of this vehicle. Lucid said it's not going to damage anything. We actually asked them if it's okay, because originally the AC stopped working as soon as my dad put this in here. We're like, did it knock into something? They're like, no, you're totally good. The master tech at the service center said you're fine keeping this in here. It fits perfectly. Honestly, Lucid should offer the Modern Spare as a factory accessory, I think, because this is just great peace of mind. And it comes with a jack, it comes with everything. We keep them in all of our electric cars, and huge fan of Modern Spare. Like I said, this video is not sponsored by them. They have sponsored other videos, but I'm also just a fan of their stuff. So there you go. Another thing that's really funny about the front trunk is it will decapitate you. I mean, don't sue me, Lucid. It's not actually probably going to decapitate you, but watch this. I'm going to hit the closing button, which is just in here. And it just comes down, no beeps, and bam. You got to like hit the button and get out. And that could be improved, of course. So let's get inside. Let's talk software. A little bit of niggles stuff to go through. I know they had some Apple executives come help them with their software team, and they seem to have really kind of kicked that process in gear. There's been constant rollout of updates, not so much feature enhancements or new features other than Dream Drive, but just bug fixes. So we got to get, seems like they got through all the bug fixes. That's solid. Now let's see what they can do with feature enhancements. Let's jump inside. And the car is just a total disaster. We have pizza down here. We have water bottles. This thing's been road tripped. We have our binoculars from our Cannonball. I mean, just full of crap. And that's one thing this car does really well, is it gives you this massive, expansive feeling cabin. Truly a wonderful experience. For me, the seats don't go low enough. And what's weird about the seats, and I'm just kind of nitpicking. First of all, I'm going to hit the down button. You'll hear some gears grinding. Listen. That's not a premium sound, is to hear it actually cogging through its gear things. And those are the little things you just don't get when you drive, an established automaker vehicle. So again, you're giving up some of that real small stuff that maybe I notice more than most because I'm in and out of everything all the time. And like that stuff doesn't really bother my dad at all. He wouldn't even notice, but that's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. Like even these little buttons and things, as we hit bumps, I can see them rattle. And like, they're just not like the trim, fit, and finish just isn't really there. I hope you can catch that on camera. Can you see that there? That this is moving around? Little things like that too. When you're charging and the AC compressor is running, the steering wheel really vibrates, just bzzz, and so there's some resonance that comes through the car. And speaking of resonance, there's only one complaint I have about the drivetrain. Well, yeah, one real complaint, and that is that the front motor is not an isolation mount. It's a fixed mounted motor. Now, as a performance enthusiast, I like that because it's not rocking on bushings. When I hit the power request, the motor's right there, and it's cool. The downside is you do get some, and not by some, like a lot of noise coming from that front motor driving at low speed. And I've talked to some of the Lucid guys, and it sounds like that might be updated into the future with double isolation mounts, and at least they're aware of the problem. They're working on it, and that'll be cool. But I don't think that's something these other cars will ever see. Now, as an EV enthusiast, I like the noise, I like the response. I prefer this, but it doesn't fit the character of the car, which is supposed to be a luxurious, quiet experience. So I'm glad to see them working on these little things. And these are the things that happen when you launch a new product with new drivetrain. Can't really fault them there. The other thing is when we were ripping this car in the canyons, and maybe we'll do a track review with it, we do get some D-rate on power. And I have to say, it holds its power for a long time, and the D-rate is minimal, and it's so impressive. But it does slightly D-rate when you're just standing on it everywhere. I doubt any Lucid owner will ever run into it. Their D-rate strategy seems to be really good. It sounds like the GT Performance will have a less D-rate, and the same with the Sapphire. So I'm really looking forward to playing around with that. That's like when we drive this car in a performance setting, when we get it on track. It's just something that owners aren't running into. It's not a customer representative driving condition, and so it's something I'm not going to spend much time harping on. But I hope they do, because the car is really great. The brakes are great. Everything about the driving of this is wonderful. So little software bugs here. The brightness doesn't seem to be automatic. You have to go through and adjust your brightness level, and it seems to be like relative to ambient conditions. I'm not sure, over here all the time. And so that's something that I've just gotten really used to sort of adjusting. The other thing is with your drinks in front of the screen here, it's hard to actually operate the lower portion of the screen, so you kind of have to pinky it through. And I've gotten pretty used to that. You can see another software update waiting to go here. In terms of the seat massage, there's a few to choose from. The seat massage is pretty good. I am impressed, but it only runs for 20 minutes. And I assume that's to actually, and this one's like shaking the seat, but I assume this is to save some of the motors in the seats and things like that from wear. I would love to see an hour remaining, because I find myself keep reinitiating over and over on a long trip. Again, the car is meant for long distance. You're sitting here for long distance. Let that thing run nonstop. But I'm sure there's a, sort of a lifetime cycle calculation there. The charging menu is pretty good. This is where you hit your start preconditioning function, and preconditioning rips pretty hard, especially down to lower state of charge. So this is good. It just should do it automatically when you put in your route plan and go through, and we'll get into that in a second. Some other things I'd like to see improved are the feelings of these switches and stalks. They're really just plasticky and not that premium. And the other thing is the turn signal. When you put the turn signal on all the way, it will stay on and keep blinking. But unlike Tesla, unlike Rivian, unlike older BMWs, you cannot cancel in the same direction that you put it on. You have to actually put it in the opposite direction to the point of resistance to cancel. And that's just not intuitive, because I've been driving BMWs for years and Tesla and Rivian. Like, why wouldn't you just cancel in the same direction like everyone else? I don't know. So that's something that I think needs a software update to improve that. Little things, of course. The next niggle is whatever's going on here with these sun visors. It really ruins the experience of this awesome glass roof. I know some owners have modified it by removing this black puck and just kind of taking this off entirely, or at least kind of stuffing it up here, something like this. I don't know, but that kind of hits my head. This needs a full redesign. It really honestly ruins the experience of this awesome glass roof. I'm not the first one to say this. It's a lot of owners complain about it as well. And I think this could use a massive redesign, similar to like Model X, where they would come up along the side. I think works pretty well. The heat management of the roof is fine. The AC system is actually pretty weak, I would say. And that's after like we got this thing. It seems like the best way to get the best air conditioning, the little trick is to put it on rear and turn on the rear vents. When you do that and you click on the seat cooling, I almost hear the compressor ramp up even more, and then it actually gets cold in here. There were a couple really hot days in California where I had to like max out the AC system. I was just like sweating in the car. I'm like, why is it so warm? As soon as my dad texted me, he said, oh, I saw on the forums, try the rear AC as well. Did that, worked great. So big props there. That worked nicely. To be honest, the only other real annoyance to me about this car, like the real hardcore things that bug me, is the drive mode settings. You have smooth, swift, and sprint, which is funny. And now you can actually do launch control with stability control off, which is nice. So this is just nerd stuff, right? So if I put the car on and I want to go stability control off, I go here, and I can actually disable stability control. And what's funny is Lucid says it's recommended for most driving conditions to disable stability control. I think that's hilarious, because that message should only be there when it says full. But I just love that they encourage you to turn stability control off for most driving conditions. That's how you know they built the car for someone like me who likes to slide around. So that's hilarious. But you can actually do full launch control now with Lucid stability control off, which is great, because if you remember from the Goodwood days when we saw Ben Collins ripping this thing up the hill, he would have to go sprint, launch it, and then like he was fiddling with the screen while ripping up Goodwood to turn stability control off to maintain good speed in the corners. So they've fixed that bug, and that's pretty good. Yeah, so in terms of the drive modes, they really need to have a separated individual mode where I can take the suspension and put it to soft, but give me full power, or give me little power, medium power with medium suspension, things like this, because these preset drive modes are a little bit annoying. What I honestly want for like daily driving is the swift suspension, but with the maximum power output of the car. The smooth's really soft, good for highway cruising, and there you don't really need that much power. So that's where this car spends 99% of its time in smooth. And if you're on a canyon, we're in sprint, dialed all the way up. But it's sort of that daily mixed driving where I want to separate these things out. And that's been a complaint of mine since I first drove the car, and I really hope they improve that. Yeah, I mean, there's really not much else. Everything else is kind of nitpicking. The car, for being a first product from a new automaker, is impressively sorted now. The car has had a massive improvement thanks to its software changes. The only other thing I would say is I use CarPlay with this car now, which is actually probably the only car I use CarPlay in. I actually don't like CarPlay. I'm one of those weirdos that likes to use the in-car systems, mostly for evaluation, but I'm just not a CarPlay fan. And this navigation system sucks. There's no other way of putting it. I mean, it doesn't let you have any adjustability. Like if I put in San Francisco here and hit go, it's going to like pull us into chargers at way too high state of charge. It's going to not allow me to adjust my arrival percentage at the destination or even at the charger. It's fast at calculating, but take a look at this: 14%, 11%, 10%, 15%, 17%. Like, why would I have charged up to 65 if I'm going to get there at 17%? Like, let me choose, like Porsche, an arrival at 3% or 5%, in this car seems more reasonable. And that way you can take advantage of that fast charging curve, because again, the car doesn't charge very fast above 30% state of charge or 40% state of charge. It really doesn't. So you really want to maximize your time down low in this car to get that big power. And so this just needs a little bit of improvement to do all of that. I also found that like half the time it couldn't find the Electrify America stations I was manually routing to. So I don't know, need some improvement there. Overall though, like I said, niggles, things they can fix over time. The product is solid. So let's jump back outside. I'll give you my final thoughts, and we'll kind of wrap up this quick 10,000 mile review. Final thoughts. Well, the car itself, from a hardware perspective, is one of the best driving luxury sedans on the market. Maybe the best, especially when you factor in its performance characteristic. It's already locking and unlocking, isn't it? Let's put this back on the roof. The app is pretty good. You get to see your charging speeds. The software experience is improving and getting better, and they're working hard, and you can see that through their bug fix updates, that things are improving. So I'm really happy to see that. Where this car's really let down, in my opinion, is actually the purpose you would buy this car is for road trips. And again, that's out of Lucid's control. It should have been in their control. They should have built a charging network. They may not have survived if they did that, because it's such an expensive proposition. To me, I would buy this car for long distance road tripping. And honestly, that experience sucks, just because you have to rely on garbage third-party charging networks to power this vehicle, which none of them we have some videos coming up with some of them, but none of them have proven they can provide a network-wide solution that's premium and works every time at the maximum power levels. So that's my impression of the cars. Like, if you're going to go for a Lucid, if you're a Lucid fan, just get the base one, because it's no worth taking it on a road trip. Just fly somewhere or drive a gas car or drive a Tesla on a road trip. My impression. The car is solid. The software is improving. The quality definitely is coming through now, especially in this spec with this interior color, the trim, the materials are really nice. The car has had, again, 0 glitches. It seems to be extremely reliable. And I've not been easy on this car. I've been cycling the battery, full charging it, full discharging it. We've been, obviously ripping on the car hard in the canyons. It hasn't given us one fault, one niggle. It's been truly wonderful. So props to Lucid for really seemingly twisting the bar, upping the game. I think there was a period of time where Lucid owners really didn't like me because I was honestly being very critical of the car, rightly so. And guess what? Lucid's been working on it and it's been getting better. And consider me a fan. I mean, I'm really into this thing to the point where if I drive a GT Performance, that might be my next car. I had one on order. The software sucked, so I canceled it. Now the software is better. I want to drive a GT Performance. That might be the next car after the Plaid. You never know. I mean, that's how impressed I am with this car. It, from a driving perspective, is solid. The headlights are amazing. I could go on and on and on. And the service experience, while you do have to visit service seemingly more, they're very great too. So there you go, the Lucid Air 10,000 mile update. Once my dad gets this car back, I don't know when, few weeks, month, 2 months, a year, 2 years, I don't know, whenever he drives out here and steals it back from me, I'm sure he'll have his own ownership updates coming. But my impressions are Lucid's improving, the product's getting better, the software is getting better, and I genuinely thoroughly enjoyed my time behind the wheel for the last 7,000 miles or so. So there you go. Thanks so much for watching another Out of Spec Reviews video. A very positive Lucid review. My recommendation is, if you're on the fence with one, go for it. If you're buying one to do the long distance road trips, don't go for it. Buy a gas car or something, because the charging networks let this car down. That's not Lucid's fault. Thanks for watching. See you in another one soon. Bye-bye.